Action Comics 1079, Mark Waid writing with Michael Shelfer on the art. All right. What was this book?
This is Phantoms Part 10, right? And was it Shelfer the whole time? I guess it
That's what
was.
Leah Comic Book said. I admittedly
Yeah,
remember it being a bit more varied.
yeah. I just think it's mostly him. There maybe is a couple
I mean,
of
to
Clayton
be
in there.
fair, on the front cover, it does just say Shelfer
Yeah,
under
is
Waid.
this all right? So yeah. So this was the Phantoms Part 10. So the at the end of the last issue, Clark had flown into the sun to stop the device from
Yes.
Aether, and the other Kryptonians have been released, and they are now supercharged and wreaking
Yeah,
havoc
we
across
kind
the
of skip
globe.
ahead a little bit, and like
Hmm.
they've already like been causing destruction all over
Hmm.
the planet, and we see like all the carnage in their
Hmm.
wake, and a bunch of superheroes are trying to fight them, but not doing particularly well.
Yeah.
And Superman wakes up in a secret location. So it's like a lead mine because that's the
Yeah.
other Kryptonians wouldn't be able to see him in there, and he's got the old regen suit on. And
Hmm.
then Mon-El is there. He's the one that saves Superman after he gets his shit kicked out of him by all the Kryptonians in the sun.
Yeah. It was an old fashioned take him out to the woodhouse beating,
Yeah,
you know.
it turns out that Mon-El's using Aether's technology to kind of make him
Hmm.
kind of like a phantom, like a phase.
Hmm.
He's like phasing in and out. So they don't know how long the tech will last though, because it's battery powered. So
Hmm.
there's a good chance that at the end of this story, Mon-El's going to disappear into like thin air. Like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or if Mark Waid is having a dark feeling, he just has him, appear back on Earth and die of lead poisoning very horrifically.
Oh sure. No, I was thinking. I mean, we're talking about the Marvel movies here. I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark. I
Yeah.
was kind of imagining
Yeah.
that.
Well, and definitely throughout this, because Clark is constantly driving home that Mon-El's his brother, you know. Um, and there's a lot of that camaraderie and brother, and it feels very much like, oh, this is my last day before retirement,
Mm.
type vibes. At least that's what I was picking up on. But
He's definitely playing the card now that's making us think about how this story's going to end, and it's really going
mhm,
to be one of two things. Either he's going to have the sad, tragic ending where he gets out a hero, or they're going to somehow think of a way to save him and keep him
yeah.
around. It's one or the
I
other.
mean, I definitely think if we're heading towards a more ethical kind of Phantom Zone, because they've shown now that the people of Kandor were kind of correct that these villains are terrible. That's why they got locked away in the Phantom Zone to begin with. Um, but I like having a more ethical prison, making Mon-El kind of the warden of the Phantom Zone. I think that's something that might
I could see
work.
them going down that route, yeah.
So.
Yeah. To be fair, no one I think ever argued with the Kandorians that the people in there were bad. It was just more that even as bad as they are, they don't
Mhm.
necessarily deserve the
The
hellscape that the
right,
Phantom Zone was.
right.
So, yeah, yeah. So basically, Superman and Mon-El, along with the other supers, go around and take out and like capture a bunch of the Kryptonians. Not all of them. They get a lot of them, but not quite all.
Hmm.
As they point out by the end, eventually they
Hmm.
get to Kara and they get to some others. Batman's on comms, kind of like keeping people sort of in the
Hmm.
right place and all that. I will say I'm very up and down on the art in this issue because I think there's like panels that look really
Hmm.
good, and then there's other panels where someone's face just looks really wrong. Like,
Or the dimensions on them are kind of off.
yeah, like, there's
Yeah.
ones where the cartoony style works really
Hmm.
well, and I think it looks good for a lot of panels.
Hmm.
But then there'll be like one like panel of Batman's face where it just looks really undefined and detailed, and it looks too like cartoony and childish.
Yeah. So like, if you look on the page where they're explaining to Clark in the cave, on the top of the page, he's in the black suit still, and Jimmy's there with Mon-El, and we get to see all the other stuff that's going on. Then you turn the page, and Jimmy, Clark, and Mon-El are all standing there.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's the same artist. Like it looks the second page looks way more cartoony, almost like caricatures
Mm.
of these characters. And I don't know if it's a posing issue. I don't know if it's the breakdowns or what. But yeah, it seems like when the art is in smaller panels or there's some form of motion, Sulfur's art looks a lot better. And then there's another page with Kara where she just I had to second glance who this was. Like I knew this was Supergirl based off of the costume and the hair, but this is not like any version of Supergirl I've ever seen.
Yeah, also, he really thought, oh, Supergirl needs the big mum hips in this panel for some reason.
She's Pixar presents Kara.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's Miss Incredible. Yeah, it's it's the Pixar hips. Yeah, but then again, the close-ups on the next page I think look fine. They're still cartoony, but they're cartoony in a really nice way that looks good.
Right, and they seem like there's some action in there, like there's some motion.
Yeah. That said, though, there's a full-page spread later on where Superman like punches a Kryptonian, where he says enough, and I do think that looks a bit weird, that page. So it's very backwards and forwards. I like it. He
almost looks like when from Super Sons, when John and Damian were running around as kids. It almost has the same type of proportions.
Oh, sure, yeah, I can see that.
But yeah.
So yeah, very very hit and miss in that sense. But yeah, there's some fun stuff in here. Dr. Light using, making the red UV light to depower some Kryptonians.
And in the beginning, them talking to Firestorm about why don't you just make synthetic kryptonite, and Firestorm's like, kryptonite's not on the periodic table. You guys got to give me a minute. So the payoff at the end where Firestorm's made some like kryptonite gauntlets for them to fight back the Kryptonians. I
like the idea of that. I do think the way he just shows up and says, "Hey guys, I figured it out," and then there's a couple of panels of people punching Kryptonians with kryptonite gloves. I do find a little bit too easy and anticlimactic.
Yeah, well, there's that, and also I feel like Shazam, who's powered by gods, right, and magic, doesn't really need the kryptonite. I feel like Shazam should be able to hold his own.
Yeah, but my main problem though is it's just too quick. It's like you set up this problem where a character has to solve something, and then the next time we see him, he's just solved it. So it just feels too easy. There's no...
there's that. And I just feel like there's other heroes that that could have gotten a showcase than Shazam going cool, right? Like in that moment.
Yeah. It's just not the point I was trying to make, though. It's more a writing problem with how they present the problem and how they deal with it. But the panel that I really didn't like of Batman is when he's top of a page where he's saying Supercorp is suddenly getting emergency alerts. It's the panel that starts with him saying that. In fact, it's the last page of the main story. Now I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Batman's face in that panel looks like he's on like a Saturday morning cartoon, but not Batman the animated series. He looks like he's on
Teen Titans Go.
Yeah, a Nickelodeon show or something. It just doesn't quite work. But basically, the cliffhanger at the end is they've realized that the Kryptonians they haven't found, the Zoners, I think as they refer to them as, they've basically left Earth and they're off causing chaos on other planets. New Thanagar, Ran, Tamaran, all that stuff. So, yeah, I think it's a fun issue. I think it does treat like a big deal that these Phantom Zone prisoners are now just running rampant. But I do also think that them taking out all the ones that are on Earth by the end of one issue does feel a little bit easy. And quick. So
we definitely have 2 issues left, so they have to do some heavy work because we're gonna need the ending to feel fitting, right?
Yeah.
So we have 1 issue to get there.
Knowing that we have 12 issues and that we're rushing this here, as it feels rushed to me, I would have preferred the prisoners getting out the Phantom Zone to be a couple issues earlier so we could really show how difficult it is like dealing with a bunch of Superman level power beings.
Of rogue Kryptonians running around, multiple. Because we saw what happened when the ones that were merged, in the first issue. The Aether had formed together when they escaped and whatnot. That's the other thing too that we missed was the gold kryptonite's missing. Because that's what Clark was going to go get. He's going to get that gold kryptonite like he used on the merged ones, and it's not to be found. So that's another thing that needs to be resolved.
Yeah, so that's somewhere, and they assume that a Zoner's got it some place, but we don't actually know that for sure. That's it's a fair assumption, but it could be something else. Found it? Yeah, it could be someone else that has it. I'm not sure about that.
I also wonder, would the gold kryptonite work on Mon-El, right? Because Daxam is right, or would that? Are
you thinking
the lead poisoning?
Are you thinking it would take away his powers but save him because now he's no longer he's just human? Right. Effectively.
I'm wondering.
Okay.
But yeah, so I don't know where that plot's going. However, the ones out in space, we keep seeing Connor wearing that commander's cape, right?
Oh, do you think that's going to be relevant? That subplot's going to actually matter now in the back couple issues?
I do think that he's going to call them in to help, bring in the rogue Kryptonians across the galaxy.
Yeah, that'll be weird because, like, on the one hand, okay, you were setting something up for later, which is good, but it didn't make it feel any less like a important part of the story in the first place. You know, like I still had to read through it to begin with, and it didn't feel that important at the time. So.
Well, the only reason I kept thinking that is because he's wearing the cape in every piece of art we see him in still.
Sure. I mean, that could just be like, oh, he got that, so we're going to keep him in it for the rest of the story. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know.
I mean, if they add that, if that's his new jacket instead of the leather jacket, I could go for it.
Maybe they'll swap Connor's life for Mon-El's. I could live with that.
That's mean.
Not that I really care about Mon-El that much, to be honest.
No. You're talking about Connor Kent, not Connor co-host, right?
Connor Kent, yes.
Yes, okay.
I mean, I'll trade Connor co-host as well.
Okay, you can only say one, Connor Kent or Connor co-host. Both of them are going to hurt me. So, you have to keep that in mind.
I mean, I guess reluctantly, real Connor has more utility than Connor Kent does.
Gotcha. That's mean still.
To which one?
I don't know. Pick, I guess. You banish both of them to the Phantom Zone, I guess, right? For Connor knows what he did. Crimes of being a ginger.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit lukewarm on this issue. I think it's fine, and there's some nice moments and pages. But I definitely have some little critiques on the art, and definitely some critiques on how easy it feels like they deal with all the Kryptonians. I suppose on the one hand you say, well, they've got access to red UV light but I guess the other problem is they make it sound like early on, oh, everyone's struggling, even though Supergirl and the rest of the Super family are involved in this. So we need Superman back for it, which is like, okay, fine, if you're telling me that they need Superman to like lead the charge. But then it feels like they win by having kryptonite from Firestorm and red UV light from Dr. Light, and I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like Superman was as integral to
instrumental.
Yeah, if anything, it'd have been more interesting if they had to deal with it without him, because it would have felt like, oh shit, we don't even have Superman, so everyone's going to have to really, put their thinking caps on and be strategic about this.
Yeah. But even then, they're fully powered Kryptonians, right? Then it's just raw power, because WAID goes out of the way to say, like, yeah, they charged up real quick, but they don't really have Clark's finesse of using these powers on top of it too. So it does seem like even without Superman, it would have been a challenge, or even with Superman, it would have been a challenge for all of them to rein it. So you're right, it is a little bit easy.
It's a bit easy, and it feels like Superman himself, while he's treated like he's important to like taking them down, it ends up not being that important. It ends up he's just another one that's there, basically. So it is what it is. But hey. The backup, though, continues to be very good. In fact, I think it's really popping now that we're at the point where everything's kind of starting to pay off, because the brother, who kind of appeared, or it was kind of hard to interpret last issue, but this issue makes it clear he's arrived.
He's there.
Yes, the brother, the Destructor, is there. And he's there to take his sister back, and Kara tries to stand in his way. And he basically just pushes her aside and acts like he's a god and says, oh, like, like, I didn't ask for your name, stupid little Earth girl, or whatever he calls her.
He calls her an errand girl, which is
errand girl. Yeah,
like, you're here to do my bidding, get out of my way. And you're just like, oh, this guy.
Yeah. So it becomes this thing where Kara's like trying to fight him. It's not going super well, but she's basically pleading with the sister, with the prisoner, hey, you don't have to make this choice. You don't have to be his other half. You can make your own choices. And she's like, he keeps saying like, oh, you are the other part of me, I am the Punisher, you are the Fear. And one of the best pages of the whole issue is this page where he puts his head against her forehead, and their masks kind of like spark together, and there's kind of like this interpretation of like their bond, and it basically looks like this, it looks like space, the stars, and it's like they're represented by two skeletons with a big sword going through both of them, like they're bound by like blood and death, or whatever you want to call that. So it's a really cool page. It really
they're bound through violence, right? It looks like they're run through with the sword.
Yeah, and he says, I am the only voice, and that's when Kara jumps in and says, no, you're not the only voice. You can have your own voice. You don't have to be alone. And like she says, oh, I will try to resist him. I will try to hold away from him. and it actually pushes him away, and he's like kind of obviously frustrated. The fight kind of breaks out again, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to kill you, blah 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 blah. I'm the destroyer. You would stick up for her, you protect her." Says you're alone. It's impossible for you to beat me. And the final page is Kara saying, you know, like, I am not alone. And you see that psychically the prisoner's with her, but so is Power Girl, who they established last part was also kind of telekinetically, or telepathically, I should say, linking up to her. So she's got like the power of these two other characters sort of in her to help her with this fight. So yeah,
and I like
really
that
good.
too, because of the duality again of Kara and Power Girl, right? Of that. So, you know, the whole we are one voice, but it's like, well, no, you're your own voice, just like Kara's her own voice, Power Girl's her own, even though, you know, they're still both versions of Supergirl. So the fact that that tied back around, I thought, again, Tamaki really doing some fun stuff with the characters.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me was in this issue is how imposing this villain was. Like, because of the way they've been building up to him as this almost like larger than life threat, him just being there and walking towards them felt super intimidating. Like, oh, like he feels like a bigger threat and more established and has more aura around him than a lot of villains feel like they have in their first stories, or even in, you know, after several stories. Like, I feel like this was a masterclass because of the mystique around what the origin story of the prisoner was, and then finding out this, like, you know, oh, she's got a brother, and like they've been destroying worlds together and all this. He feels so imposing when he comes in. It feels like a big deal. It feels like a big moment, and I think that's super impressive. And it's something that comic books like throw so many villains at us. They have so many big pages of villains showing up, and for the most part, you just kind of shrug and go, "It's another one of those moments." But this actually had achieved some aura to him before he appeared.
Yeah, it really is a masterclass in pacing, right? And all the small, quiet moments that led to her telling the origin and how she's the destructor of, or destroyer of worlds, that and all that kind of stuff. And then we see kind of his presence throughout her life to when he finally does. It's like it finally matches that larger than life presence.
And I think that the thing that makes
there.
it feel so strong isn't even the fact that he's destroying worlds, because lots of comic book villains are destroying worlds. It's how personal it is to the prisoner, because it's like the prisoners ran away from like an abusive husband kind of story, right? Where it's not so much that this guy is dangerous to a big massive people, but it's the idea if he's ever alone with her again, he like, you know, that is terrifying to think what he might do. Right, you know, that's the example I'm using, is the idea of an abusive husband who tracks down his wife and like drags her back into his life. This is not quite that, but it reminds me of it in the personal level, where it's like she's tried to run away from this. She even wants to die because of what this brother has made her do, because of what she's been a part of as a result of him. So when he shows up again, it feels like it's having a big impact because of how much it's like going to set her back, like her psychology and her decision making and getting away from this is all going to be reset if Supergirl can't help her. And in some level, I think you at least get how screwed up she is from all these experiences through these past few parts of the story. That, yeah, there's like the danger here isn't so much that they'll be back together and destroying worlds again. It's that Supergirl has to protect her from this abusive brother who's come back for her, and that feeling is what makes it feel super big. So, really smart in the writing with that, I think. So yeah, I've been really enjoying this backup.
Yeah, and then that page where her and Kara, the prisoner and Kara, touch hands, right? And it's just like you can just feel that the space between them, right? It's closing, and I just the way that the art makes that work. Yeah, when they finally do touch hands.
That's when the like there's like an energy blast that throws the brother back. It's almost like the power of this friendship is repelling him in a way.
It's just a real good stuff.
Yeah, it's really good. So, yeah, like a lot. All right, what are you giving Action Comics?
I'm gonna give this a straight 7.
Here, I almost want to go above that because of the backup, because the backup is really clicking now. That it's like set all of its pieces in motion, and we're getting the big payoffs to what's going on. But yeah, the main story is just okay. It does kind of squander a little bit of the potential that it has. So I think I will say the backup gets up to the 7. If I was just doing the main story, it probably would be like more like a 6 or a 6.5, but the backup is very, very good.